I'm Del Straub, and I was very privileged to be married to Carolyn Smith Straub for about 55 years. Now, the last 5 to 8 years was pretty much consumed with our fight with breast cancer. Um, the team consisted, of course, of Carolyn and myself and Dr. Weiner at St. Pete's Hospital. Carolyn was a really strong woman. Uh, she climbed most every peak in Montana. And she used to say that the best lunchrooms on the planet were atop the peaks in Montana. She also was the oldest woman ever to be certified as a full certified ski instructor among professional ski instructors of the Rockies. A one time event, very impressive. And I say those two things just as a suggestion how strong a person she really was, both physically and mentally. In 2003, she and a friend were volunteering in Kabul, Afghanistan, with a um, non governmental organization that worked with refugee and orphan children. Uh, in those days, they had no electricity except from a generator, which operated a couple hours in the afternoon. So at night, there wasn't much to do. So one night, after lying in the darkness, wide awake, Carolyn decided that it was a good time to do a self breast exam, and she found a lump. Upon returning to the U.S., she went to St. Pete's and uh, got had an appointment with Dr. Weiner at the cancer center there, which at that point was very small in terms of facility, but lots of patients and only Dr. Weiner to deal with them. So anyway, he prescribed some imaging, and after the completion of the imaging, uh, he agreed that yes, in fact, there was a lump, and they needed to decide what to do then. A friend of hers wanted her to go to the UCLA Cancer Center in Los Angeles, um, a major institution regarding cancer in the world. So she did, and Dr. Weiner was very supportive of her trip down there to get a second opinion. He just said, "When you get back, keep me in the loop." So for the first 2 days, she did lab tests and almost every kind of test that you could think of and imaging. And then on the third day, she met with for 4 hours with a team of cancer doctors that were specialists in the various areas of their expertise in cancer treatment. They ended with a program of recommendations for treatment, which she brought back to Dr. Warner. And they went over them in great detail. Uh, I was sitting in on those meetings. Uh, Also, a family member who was a physician at OHSU, the largest hospital in Oregon, wanted her to come there for a third opinion. Dr. Weiner was very supportive of that. There was no indication of ego involvement. It was just like the more we know, the better we can do in terms of deciding what to do for your treatment. So she went to the OHSU Cancer Center and got a third opinion. They also concurred with UCLA, and of course UCLA was much more expansive, but it was the same. It was the same uh, treatment plan generally that Dr. Weiner had considered with Carolyn. So when she returned from OHSU, they went over all the options. and decided what the program was going to be. So for the next year or two, she did a double mastectomy, a period of radiation, a number of cycles of infusion, and basically the tumors seemed to be getting smaller, and Dr. Weiner and Carolyn and I seemed to be winning the war. So there was a period of time there where we were in Alabama. Carolyn and I were treating my mother, who had terminal breast cancer. And once my mother had died and we settled all of those issues, we returned to Helena. Carolyn told me when we got back that she felt like that the cancer had returned, that she detected that while we were in Alabama, but she didn't mention it because of the fact we were treating my terminal mother. So anyway, she, of course, immediately contacted Dr. Weiner, and they did more imaging. And sure enough, the cancer had returned, and it looked like it was beginning to metastasize. So over the next couple, 3 years, there were periods of infusion. There were a number of complications as a result of the cancer development that required her to become an inpatient at St. Peter's, usually for a period of 3 to 5 days. She would contact Dr. Weiner whenever there was something that was painful or extremely painful. And he would tell her, okay, you go to the ward. I'm going to do a direct admit of you, which means you do not have to go through the ER and all of that time-consuming stuff. And that happened on several occasions. And I began to sense that there was a little issue with some of the other staff folks, not on the cancer ward, but in other parts of the hospital, that about him having the authority to do those direct admits without having to go through them. I kind of sensed that because I had been invited to serve on the St. Peter's advisory board, which we met monthly and went over a number of topics. And then we would, if appropriate, provide our findings, recommendations to the official board of directors for St. Peter's. And one of the things that I learned during that series of meetings on the advisory council was that there was I won't call it, well, maybe I will call it jealousy on the part of some of the other physicians as to his the standing that he had in the hospital and among the love and respect of all of his patients going back for years. And there was a little resentment, I think, about that. During the spring of 2012, Carolyn's metastasization progressed, and along with that, considerable development of pain. On one day in the spring, Carolyn said, I'm going to have a party. Oh, okay, we're going to have a party. She says, it's going to be a big party. And I said, okay. She says, I'm going to rent a band. I'm going to get a caterer, and I'm going to rent a circus tent. And I figure we'll invite 200 or 300 people. I said, okay, what is this? And she said, I'll tell you, we're going to call it a party, but I think it's my going away party. we had that party, and about a month later, one afternoon, the pain became pretty intense. And she called Dr. Weiner, and Dr. Weiner said, okay, I will be going to a cancer conference later this afternoon, but I will call and give them instructions for a direct admit. Another doctor recently to come to the St. Peter's Cancer Center will be standing in for me while I'm gone to this 2-day conference. But if you need me, you can call me on my cell phone. Well, she went, and there was a direct admit that afternoon, and they started IV painkiller because that's the only thing that was strong enough to deal with her pain. That evening, about 8 o'clock, she said that she was feeling a little better. There was still considerable pain, but said I had to go home and feed the dogs and the chickens. That's kind of the way the person she was. So I did. I understand that, in retrospect, I understand that the pain increased, and they received permission to increase the pain medication from the stand-in oncologist. And that occurred. And then I got a call about midnight that the charge nurse on duty had gone into the room to check on her, and her heart had stopped. They don't know exactly when, but probably within 30 minutes of the charge nurse going into the room. Of course, they called me. That was like on a Friday night, and on Monday, Dr. Weiner returned to Helena, and I wanted to go and chat with him very briefly. So I called the cancer center and talked to the staff nurse there and said I wanted to talk to Dr. Weiner. And she said, of course. So that afternoon, that's a Monday afternoon, I went to the cancer center, and I met with Dr. Weiner for just a very few minutes because he was always so busy and up to his ears in patients. And I said, I just want to thank you for all of the kindness that you have shown to Carolyn and me and the rest of the family over these years by treating Carolyn with such care and attention to even the smallest detail, and all of the time that you spent with her with no self-imposed time limit on your meetings and your conversations. I just want to thank you. And I kind of sort of assumed that someone that had seen so much death over so many years would be pretty not affected, maybe, like most of us would. But a little tear kind of came down out of his eye, not a big tear, but a tear, nevertheless. And that told me a whole lot about Dr. Weiner's character and the depth of his character. So when I went out of the office, I passed by the reception desk, and the head nurse of the cancer center was sitting there. So I spoke to her and I said, I want to thank you and all the rest of the staff, for that matter, for all the wonderful things that you did. I, of course, spent the last few minutes thanking Dr. Weiner. And she said, well, you know, I don't know if there is a place called heaven, but if there is, that man has already got a reservation in heaven.